and then maybe that's like spiteful or whatever, like, but like I tend to think like you have moments like this, like just to like break like the whatever's inside of you,
Mm-hmm.
that like you
Mm-hmm.
need to break it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like if you feel like you're shackled down at your job, it's like some people go and like buy a Harley or something, or like I don't know, like some people like, you know, whatever, like make effigies and burn them. Like who knows what it is, like to try to like have that outlet, right? And like this area is like I literally saw there were places where I could like hide things that like
Yeah.
no one would pick up on. All right, what's up? Tech Packs Are Due podcast episode 10. Um, we are back. Got a little bit of a special episode today. Um, man, we've just been Colin's like my right-hand man, and we have just been just trying to figure out how we want to like keep going with this. And it's like every day is a new thing, and we make it make an episode, and then we think, well, what's the next best thing to do? Um, how do we keep the momentum? Obviously, making episodes, but then when you sit down and you like, we're not exactly professional writers, like, so we're just trying to make like the best possible thing for the footwear world, and so yeah, I think in some ways, so if you know me, I get in my head a little bit. Especially this is kind of a shameless kind of thing. It kind of just like I want everything to be perfect, and so sometimes I don't put stuff out, but and that makes me a little hesitant at points. But sometimes, you know what? I think that's part of this awesome podcast is just kind of getting over the like oh, should I do this? Oh, should I put this into the world? But honestly, our we talked about this offline. We were like, well, our best episode only has 120 views, so it's not
Let's keep
exactly
going.
we're not
Yeah.
exactly Bieber status at the moment. We're not number one. So but at any rate, we are putting a lot of thought into this, and so I um hope that's not wasting anybody. But like one of the conversations we were having is like, does Colin come on this episode? Like, do we keep Colin off this episode and like kind of sporadically bring Colin in? And I was telling him, I was like, I listened to this podcast, Nate Land podcast. Shout out to them. They're never going to see this, but um, because they're famous and cool and all that stuff. But it's comedians that I love, and specifically Nate Bargatze, um, who I found on a road trip with my wife before she was my wife. Like, and I like clean comedy. It's just me. And so, we're listening because we're on a road trip. We're just trying to kill time. We're listening, and like I'm like the same people keep coming on. Like there's like some Steve Harvey clips that are like clean, so they would like pop on. And um before the whole Cosby thing happened, it would be like some Cosby would show up, and it's like, oh, and then just like other clean comics who like sometimes they were funny, and this is like Pandora time too, so like Spotify hadn't really shown
Yeah.
up. I mean
You were
it
just
was,
at
but
the
like
mercy at the mercy of the Pandora algorithm.
right, but like sometimes I would use Pandora to like find new stuff, and I hear this guy, he's just like the joke starts basically like this, like, and like he was talking in a voice that sounds like us, and like he's like, I'm real lazy. And he's like, how do I know that? He's like, because I was watching a football game one day, and I saw they were going to do the kickoff. And when they did the kickoff, I got up to get a snack. And when I walked to the fridge, get the snack, and walk back, he had run the kickoff all the way back for a touchdown. So in the time that it took me to go from like my recliner to the refrigerator and back, a guy had run 100 yards. It's like that's how I know I'm not I'm not an athlete. I'm not gonna make it. And that's like kind of like the premise. And I was like, I just remember like turning to my then fiance, probably, maybe not. But turning to her and just being like, who the heck was that? And I remember like having her like, can you pick up the phone and like look at who was that? And before we know it, we had listened to like the whole comedy album. We found him and like
Nice.
yeah, like found his specials and like I mean this is
Raving fans.
yeah, this is like 8 years ago now. And
Hmm.
anyway, so the point of that story is they have a podcast, and now he's gotten to be so famous that he's not on the podcast all that much. And I question now what the viewership is, because even myself, like if I see like, you know, it's just Aaron and Brian on the podcast this week, I'm like, oh man. And like they will usually like start the description with Nate is back or Nate is here. Like and I imagine that it does considerable things for their things, but for their viewership. But I'm like, oh, I wonder if we do like Caulin is back on the show. Like they're not watching for me, but maybe
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. What are you talking
that's what I'm
about?
saying. I'm like, well, maybe in this situation I'm the Nate, and
Yeah, I think you
I'm
are.
going to get too busy, and then it's going to be Tech Packs are due with Caulin, and Jake shows up every once in a while.
Jake
Oh,
is
bro,
back.
yeah. Oh, brother. Okay. Any rate, like I said, we're trying to figure this out, and I think there's just such a open end to this, like as far as footwear needing a real like podcast with people, you know, who like know their stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just super cool. So without any further ado, let's get into some shoes. Let's talk about
Mm-hmm.
some fun stuff. I think the footwear world moves pretty fast, at least nowadays. It feels like with Instagram and stuff. I don't know how we would ever have kept up with this without social media back in the day, but like it just feels like brands just like, man, they'll just post stuff whenever, and new
All the
models are
time,
just
too.
like, yeah, just coming off the shelves. I mean, other like lots of brands have different sports, and so there's mixed like drops and stuff. I know I saw some cleats for baseball this week, which is kind of cool. But what I wanted to talk about is I saw some images. I don't know if they were out of TRE, and I might try to like splice them in very quickly in and out to this episode.
Ooh.
But
Yeah.
for me, I got really excited by seeing Skechers like have a
Yeah.
line. Um, and not that they haven't had running shoes in the past,
Yeah.
like they do, but like these like I think it was like three styles,
Yeah, they're
and
they're
they
really
were
starting to drop the hammer. It's been like the last year and a half, 2 years that they've really
yeah.
been bringing it.
And I was like, this is actually I don't knowing what I know that there is a plethora of talent in the
Hmm.
design world. Certainly, I feel like there's starting to almost be more designers than there are jobs.
Yep.
Um, I think we're kind of in that realm. I hard to know because again, this is an industry that's just like no one's got tabs on this. Like,
Yeah.
like no one's there's no metrics. Like, like people leave their hometowns to like design shoes in
Hmm.
foreign places, right? So it's like, um, knowing what I know, I don't know. When I see Skechers shoes come out, I realize they have a quicker turn, I think, than most footwear brands.
Hmm.
But what I do see is they're putting that effort into the run and now into basketball.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say it's starting to look more unique. And the other thing I want to say is when a brand like Skechers gets into it, it's
Yeah.
like a little scary because it's like they have a lot of resources.
Yeah.
They can
100%.
certainly enter like
Yeah.
pretty fast.
And I don't mean to interject here, but I do
Yeah,
have a little bit of the inside scoop here because the new interesting performance stuff seeing from Skechers is like kind of a tight, close team called the Technical Performance Team at
shoot.
Skechers, and it's run by Greg Smith, name drop,
Oh, no.
who's obviously a ex Nike kind of vet,
Yep.
and I've gotten to meet a few people who are on the team, um, and they've mentioned like that their segment of Skechers that they're running, the technical performance team, that like they're really trying to run it like um, like a true performance brand. So like that's why when you see they just launched into cleated, I think, in the UK, um,
Nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
with a cleat in Skechers, and then obviously they have a few signature athletes now in basketball. They're producing basketball
Yep.
shoes, and then like I
Yep.
said, for the last few TREs, they've had some really compelling running shoes for runners. I mean, I've seen content based around them and reviews saying like they, even though they're a Skechers shoe, like obviously Skechers has kind of like this connotation in the
Yep.
market. But they're really working against that with what they're producing. It's really sweet.
Right. And like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we call a spade, and like we all like. I feel like Skechers like has had a hard time. I'd say with like the image, the brand image, like tends
Hundred
to be
percent.
like, oh, like like a cheaper shoe, price point stuff, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
I actually don't like find a lot wrong with that because I feel like they put shoes on people's feet, like
Yeah. Hundred
way
percent.
more than most brands, right? But it's like to see someone like them, like the first. I mean, the one thing I was going to call out about these shoes is, um, for me, I feel like if you get a good sidewall, like
Hmm.
it you can carry a lot of a shoe
Yeah.
with a good sidewall. And I thought these ones were, man, super super cool. I wish I could just like have video magic and just have them
Throw them
pop
in
up.
like
Yeah,
we're on
like
a Zoom call, like a meeting.
yeah, but like
Share your screen.
yeah, I will definitely have it come up in some way.
Hmm.
But yeah, just like super super cool. I was and I think when you have like a one of them I think is more extreme and it's like geometry and
Hmm.
it just like naturally like lends to like an interesting bottom gauge
Hmm.
like if you're trying to do like create like swoops and they're really big and you're trying to get the shadowing and the highlight and you want to make a statement, like just naturally, like that will carry to the bottom unless you like fade out the texture to like the bottom gauge where like you're
Oh,
turning
it's just
over
flat.
to the bottom of the shoe.
Hmm. Right. Right. Right.
Like you're gonna try to cancel some of that so you can get a nice smooth transition. Like this
Hmm.
shoe like looks like they just embraced it and like
Yeah.
what is on the sidewall carries around to the bottom and um I don't know when I see stuff like that like I don't know you just like it's just unique what they chose to do is unique and good and what I think again like when we're here and it's a very visible like career it's a very visible like output
Hmm.
um I think you just want to I don't know if I'm a designer I just want to know that I came and brought it
Yeah.
and if like and I feel like also you want to know that you're always on your toes
Yeah.
because like the next
Yeah.
it's like I don't want to say yeah but like yeah you just always want to be like bring your A game and know that at like any point like a brand's going to put out their best they're going to come with it. No one's taking their foot off the gas, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm sure
Yeah.
like a team like that on Skechers is probably the chains are kind of taking off, saying you just hey like make it good like.
Yeah.
And so I mean I think if you get that kind of green light, like I feel like people come in and be pretty creative for you. Um,
I mean,
but it's
I
just
think it
really
makes the
exciting to
business
see
better
because
too.
yeah, say it again.
I was gonna say, I think it makes the business better too. Like trusting the people who have the technical expertise and the knowledge and the understanding of the market to like lead you to where it needs to go, like to take the risk.
Yeah,
Um, because I'm sure like in other parts of the business and Skechers, like it could be perceived as a risk to like give this new team kind of like almost free reign to do something new and interesting in the performance
yeah,
space, but it's
yeah,
paying off. I mean, I think it's gonna only get bigger from here. So
yeah. And I mean, I mean, they obviously have access to the tech, like, and
yeah,
which is a big part of the battle. You just want to have the best technology under your foot too when you're entering into that like real performance run situation. And anyway, I just think it was, usually I'm not, again, I'm not here to knock, but I'm not usually saying that about Skechers. So the fact that like they're showing up is like, oh, that's yeah. I guess you got to be on your A game every time. I like kind of like
yeah,
when
dude.
Puma kind of like showed up and started
Yeah,
doing
yeah. Like
running. You're
Puma's
like,
been doing some pretty crazy running stuff, very compelling, like design wise. But then like their users, the people who run in them, love them.
yeah,
I mean, I
so
think the only catch that people always bring up is that like Puma just doesn't have the same distribution channels in like run specialty like
right.
other companies do.
Yeah, it was like it was to the point where I like sent it to a friend the other day. Like these bloggers are like putting up like here's your race day, your trainer, your blah blah blah. Like had four shoes listed up for brands, and it was just funny to see like Puma on the brand, like
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
list because I don't think 5 or 6 years ago you would have it
I
wouldn't be there,
even 3 years ago.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
anyway, just cool. So like when you see like Skechers kind of turn it on, um, it's fun. The other thing I thought was really cool was that I thought was interesting for we're talking about footwear design is the whole Fear of God basketball thing collection that came out.
Hmm.
And I looked at it and I was like, man, like I was really inspired by it because it was like super simple. And
Hmm.
it kind of brings up an interesting point because like obviously I have been down the realm of designing um I wouldn't say complicated, but kind of pretty complicated stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you look at something like a Fear of God, you get like kind of one take and you get like one material and it's crafted kind of well. And then, the
Yeah. Very
bottom is just
minimal.
like, yeah, like one take and then that's it.
Hmm.
What was interesting is I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I'm like, I wonder if like I can sketch this a little bit or like how would I like
Hmm.
and so I started like going in and kind of like working it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, when you sketch it, I don't know if it's that compelling. Like because it's just
Yeah.
lines. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, I'm like, man, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, in order to pitch this idea, like I feel like I would have to like render the material like
Yeah. You
100%.
really
So
have
then you
to
could be
lean
like,
heavily on the craft.
yeah, right. Because then you could be like, okay, well, under this mesh is just like, kind of got like this toothy mesh, and then on the top, we're doing this nice like suede
Right.
microfiber, whatever it is, that's like
Hmm.
perfed. And these materials are like super nice, and then when together they will make nice, but like marker, like and
Yeah, you
just
can
like
only
well,
capture so much, right?
even if you like only do like like a matte like well, you just did color only. Like you're just
Hmm.
trying to illustrate the lines. It's not
Right.
like it just doesn't like you would have to make it and like make it again and
Yeah.
like you have it's to the point where you're more of like crafting it in
Yeah.
real time, because like that sketch is like quick, like
Yeah. My
it,
my take
yeah,
on like the fear of God stuff is always like he said this in interviews before, but Jerry Lorenzo has always talked about like how he's like just a big stickler for shape and silhouette. Like that's the main thing that he cares about is like the shape and silhouette of shoes. And
right,
whether it's for good or bad, um, like they seem to like with every single one of Jerry's shoes, whether it's like the Nike stuff that he did or the stuff that he's doing with Adidas right now or the stuff that he does on his own with, Fear of God and Essentials, they have their slides and stuff that they've done.
yeah,
Every single one of them has a brand language, but it's not through graphics or colors. It's like shape. Like when you see that
mm,
Fear of God basketball shoe, you're like, yeah, that's a Fear of God basketball shoe. Like it looks like all the other ones, but different
mm-hmm,
in those ways that you just talked about, the materiality, how the materials talk and are crafted next to each other. But the shape, if you simplified all of them and overlaid all of them, they're almost all identical.
yeah,
Um, so sometimes, like when I saw it, I was like, didn't I already see this shoe? Because the colorways are very simple. Um, but it's just a different take. It's almost like a luxury take on,
yeah,
it's obviously a luxury take. It's Jerry Lorenzo. Like he's all about that kind of like essential luxury.
right,
Um, but yeah, I think it's interesting how he can like create a brand identity through silhouette and shape alone.
right,
Um,
and
but it does
I,
yield like over the course of like your discography of shoes, it does yield something that like looks like, oh, like can we zig a little bit? Can we go a little harder? Can we do something that's like a little bit more,
yeah,
So
the like it's the finish too. It's
mhm.
like
Matt,
yeah, I think there's a lot of ways where like I don't know. I think that I really really liked the Nike stuff.
yeah,
Um,
it's very technical too. Like it had the zoom strobel and the double stack
yeah,
zoom, and it
yeah,
was comfortable. It was hard to get your foot into, but it was comfortable.
yeah. I never even like I haven't even held one or been near
Oh,
one,
they're
but I was
cool.
like just image wise, I could tell like oh like you could tell the finish is like really thought through. I'm like there's definitely like a CMF of that shoe where like it could get pretty nasty pretty fast. But I think because
Hmm.
they like harmonized everything
Yeah.
across like pieces and you know
Hmm.
did their best like color match and all that stuff. Like I think of the orange one. I think of that one like all the time.
Yeah,
Like where it's
that
just
orange
like
one's
orange,
sweet.
orange, orange. Yeah, it's like man, that's super cool. But yeah, I think that, and then it just translates over to Adidas and like, um, I mean, I'll be honest, being a basketball player, not interested, but being a designer, like, yeah, like, that's
it's
pretty
it's
great.
it's definitely hard. Like it's when you look at them, they really don't scream performance basketball like immediately. Like,
Yeah,
and maybe that's just like what's in the market currently and how my perception has formed around that.
that's
But
right.
also like there is something to like kind of that block sidewall, that like kind of blank monolithic sidewall feeling kind of old school, feeling kind of like cupsole y, which
Yep.
is a great innovation. Don't get me wrong; like we still use it in lots of shoes, and even in basketball shoes. But it
Yeah.
doesn't feel forward thinking in a way.
Mm,
It doesn't feel like a performance shoe of today or the
yeah.
future. It feels like a performance shoe that's meant to capture like a certain amount of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Which
interesting,
is
but
fine. Oh,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's all good. Yeah, like
yeah, it's good. Yeah,
I do.
no knock or anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do like the it's interesting that you have the outsole and like
Hmm.
I'm looking at it and like how the lines move and
Hmm.
it almost feels like literally you line up those lines and then just do like one stroke of um like liquefy where you're just like
Yeah,
pulling and you just pull it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just
I know
done.
exactly what you're
Like,
talking. I'm looking at them right now. Yeah.
yeah, you just pull it once, it's over. Um. Anyway, no, it's like it's just cool stuff like that. You see it. I love like I think that's what gets me onto Instagram quite a bit. Where I'm like, oh, I wonder if there's any new shoes today. Like, oh, I wonder if
Yeah.
anything like even like a bad Jordan colorway is like still
It's
like
interesting to
drawn.
see.
Yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, like that's cool. Um, yeah. Speaking of which, I saw like a Jordan like December drop calendar. I was like,
Oh,
I'm sorry, no,
a lot,
nothing for me.
lot of stinkers in there.
Yeah, I was like, oh man. Uh, anyway, I don't want to hate on it, but it was just like, dang, there's not a single colorway of anything on there.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
uh, that's a wild time.
It's
Um,
hard. CMF is hard, man.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's brand demand. I'm sure they're selling like crazy because that
Yeah.
like consumer is like, yeah, whatever. Like you just find someone who likes blue and that's gone. Like
Yeah, there you
that's how it
go.
is. Um, yeah, so those are the things I'm excited about. Just like got me thinking. I will be watching out, like watching the Skechers ride for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm
I'd say
super
that's
stoked to
even more
see.
intriguing to me, than the fear of God. But I really thought that was interesting when I tried to put that sketch down. I was like, man, like this is like when you're working with that kind of simplicity, like it's
Hmm.
really tough.
Yeah, unless you
Like you
have like
really,
a
yeah.
sample.
Well, you like really care about the line, every line you really care a lot more about because you're not like stacking stuff on top of
Mm,
it or like putting a bunch of overlays or like, it's all everything is yeah, you got to be honed. like
yeah, it's like highly
uh
considered, you know?
yeah, like and then you're like, well, if I only have this material and this material, these two materials better be like the best possible
Mm,
things that I can find.
yeah.
Um, which is all a challenge in its own right. Um, sweet. Well, then the main topic we were going to talk about today, near and dear to my heart, the Ghost Max One. Um,
Woo.
don't know, like if we might do like all the whole design, but we might just cover more story and then like maybe have a design review or something. Do like a whole breakdown of my own thing.
For sure.
Um,
There it needs to have its own, it deserves to have its own. Yeah.
something and like maybe I can talk someone to coming in and talking Ghost Max One. But definitely a lot of things like I would say a really highlight of the career for sure has been like working on that shoe and definitely like not I would say not something that we ever thought like would have it the impact
Hmm.
that it did. Um, and it's one of, again like these are all thoughts that I have that I'm like this is why the podcast is happening is because I think of these things and I'm like wouldn't it be nice if this was recorded
Yeah.
um because like literally and we talked about it last week with Doug and it happens with almost everything is like you just um in shoes I don't think unless you're like a again like a you're you're designing for an athlete you're designing for an influencer like I'm sure if someone ever does a Taylor Swift shoe like yeah okay
It'll
like
have quick changes in mind. It'll
I'm
have
sure well I'm sure you'll the first time you pick up a pen you're thinking this is going to be huge like
right.
whereas
Right.
like whereas like me sitting down with this team I don't think we thought like, oh, this is going to be a massive thing. That's going to
Right.
kickstart something for, for Brooks. And I thought the same thing about the Hyperion Max when we first did that shoe. It
Yeah.
was like, it was just us trying to think about what's the evolution that we want to make, how far
Mm-hmm.
forward, seeing it like running is just like flying forward really fast. And every brand,
Mm-hmm.
like when they do something, the next year they're coming up and doubling down on it and then doubling again. It's like they're growing it exponentially. We're just like, well, how do we take our shot? Excuse me. Sorry, still getting over it.
You're good.
But hold on.
Stand by.
No cuts in this. No cuts. I don't have time for that. So, but no. So like, when we talked about this again offline, we were talking like, well, the Genesis was literally like at Brooks, like you just get assigned shoes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so we're getting into the start of the year, and you're just like, okay, here's you're gonna work on the Hyperion, and we're also gonna have you work on the Dyad. And I was like, I don't know. When you got a running company and you get designed a quote unquote like walk recovery,
Mm-hmm.
really like podiatric, definitely not for like the hardcore running like people. You're
Yeah.
just like, like, okay, I guess I'm not doing like the super awesome elite product now. I'm doing like this thing
Yeah.
and but I like can't. Oh, go
Real
ahead.
quick for the listeners at home, like the Dyad, would you say is like the same like equivalent to like the Monarch, the Air Monarch for Nike? It's like just like the comfort shoe, maybe a little bit more
Yeah.
like podiatric or like stability focused.
Well, so that's kind of like, yeah, and to answer that question, like when I first got handed the shoe, like or got told I was going to be on this team, we had these like try travel. We're like, oh, we're going to do some try travel, and my PLM approached me and was like, hey, like, pack your bags. We're going to go to Denver, and we're going to go to this big like pediatric like convention. Like we usually show up there as a company anyway. We got some gurus there that push product and talk to like, talk to doctors and, get insights from people. And, like Hoka's there as well, of course, like they'll be there. They're like, I want you to just like, I want to go there. And this was like, I would say invaluable to me. Like, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know much about this world. So I was like, okay, let's like, yeah, and, in industrial design, you want to just like immerse yourself because I don't think there are people who can take it, make assumptions through like a one pager, and like make
Mm-hmm.
good product.
Right.
I think like um probably like the IDEO types would say like you want to get into this world, like you want
Yeah.
to be in there.
You almost want to become the user that you're designing
Yeah,
for.
yeah, because
Yeah.
then you'll like know like where the gaps are, where it won't, where
Right.
then you won't make the obvious failings. You won't like do something dumb.
Right.
um, because you can come off pretty quickly as like false, false
Right.
expertise or know how it. And I think with designers, we struggle with that anyway, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like mentally. So you want to like try to get rid of it. But so anyway, we go to this conference and like we are there, and they my PLM's like, hey, like I'm going to tell you, we're going to go to this conference. We're going to talk to some people. You can see how people interact with the brand, which is kind of cool. She's like, but here's what I want to do. I'm going to take you to some like old school, like brick and mortar retail joints. And the main purpose for these places is people get
Yeah.
like prescribed a shoe
Right.
and they come here to buy it. Like
Mm-hmm.
that
Like a
is the
comfort
situation.
footwear, like
Yeah.
walking feet place. Yeah, yeah,
And if you can imagine, and not like for good reason. But if you can imagine, like anytime Brooks or like other companies move away from serving that customer, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
like the guy who owns the shop is just ticked. So I'm talking
Mm.
like, they're just like super
Hey,
mad.
you changed it, and I can't prescribe it anymore to this
Yeah, well
person.
like,
Like, yeah,
and that's why you go through and you have to like re-get like doctors to like be pumped about it, right? Like
right.
you have to walk them through the changes and why, and then they make it. But anyway, so essentially I sit down and I'm looking at shoe brands that like I've never heard of before that make like walk/run shoes, and like of course like our Beast is there, Glycerin, GTS with the posts is in there,
Mm-hmm.
and the Dyad's in there as well. And so like this is all like walking stuff, and um honestly looks like super, like the whole thing is like, well, this is obviously people who like have problems, like they
Yeah.
need these like ultra stable trainers and stuff. um and so I'm like sitting there and I'm like looking at all the shoes and these products. I'm like, man, like I don't know. And my PLM's like, okay, you see that, like we're not doing that. I was like, okay, like
This
we're
is to
good.
tell you. This is to show you exactly what you're not gonna make for us.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, cool. She's like, yeah, and you see the attitude there. You understand now. Like this is what's going on in those types of stores. Like, look, I want to make, like, we're a running shoe company. I want to make this shoe more runnable. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so this needs to be the running version of the Dyad. Like,
Right.
this isn't the walking version of the Dyad. This is the running version. Like, we're gonna have some protection. We're gonna have like a wider than normal base. Like, this is like it's gonna be different. Um, and so we get going and stuff. But like, I remember like just having that, seeing that, um, again, getting put on the Dyad. I think someone like me too, when I was that young, kind of in the industry, this is me coming fresh back from innovation at Brooks.
Right.
And so I'm like in this transition and I'm coming in and I'm like, no way am I coming back from innovation doing this awesome junk and like gonna get thrown into the Dyad. Like, there's no way I'm gonna like just sit back and be like, okay, guess I'm designing
Let
like
me
a
make a walking shoe.
right,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
throwaway shoe. Like this is like not going to be exciting, right? Um, which is like again the reason why I'm saying like at the start, like no one should like handed a project and think I'm sunk. Like I'm never
Yeah.
going to be the best designer in the world because I've been given the worst project in the brand. Like simply like flipping it on its head and having a team that
Yeah.
was like wanting to do that in the first place was helpful. But I was just
Yeah.
kind of like, no, like I want to do like every shoe in our line should like be cool. Like there
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be a shoe that people look at it and think, well, I'm not gonna get that because it's not doesn't look as good as a Ghost.
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
why isn't every shoe like living up to Ghost standard? Like
Mm-hmm.
at the Brooks Running Company, like if you pick something that's not the Ghost, it's because you're picking it for a reason that we've already like
Right.
prescribed. Like, oh, it's drop, it's stack, it's this. Like,
Right.
you don't want to pick it because it's like, well, I have been prescribed this shoe and now I have
Yeah.
to get this thing. Like,
Right.
and if I would rather it be like when you get it, you're pumped. Like, oh, I was
Yeah.
prescribed this shoe. Like,
I was prescribed it, and I want to rock it.
oh,
Yeah.
sick. Like,
Well, just because the technical and performance aspects of the shoe have to be a certain way to help, you know, the consumer of the dyad doesn't necessarily mean it needs to look like all the other stuff that the dyad is next to.
right.
Right. I like
Um,
that. I like that thought process.
yeah, and so like after a long time of sketching, like and there's definitely like you can. I mean, we did a whole thing like on the Brooks blog and stuff, and um, but like the first rendering, we had this like I want to say the color palette had this orange,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like all about using like, well, I knew I wanted like a jacquard mesh that I could do two color and like
Mm-hmm.
really fade it and stuff. So I knew I wanted that, and like, well, the first couple samples were pretty crispy. Like they were not
Yeah.
like we got like a couple pullovers back, and I was like, yo, pull the plug on this material. Like we got to get something else in here because we're not meeting what the industry is gonna want for sure.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then we had these like this big last and like all this stuff, and I'm like, man, how is this ever gonna look good? But then like when we were using like this pretty thin mesh, like we put that on, and like suddenly like this shoe has gone from looking like you look at previous dyads, they gone from looking big to looking
Yeah.
like sleek and all this stuff. But I am holding in my hand the first round sample of like the
Ooh.
what was once the Dyad
No
turned
way.
turned Ghost Max. And yeah, like it's one of those ones where I had to have this one, and I found a pair sitting
Mm-hmm.
around the office, and I just like went up to it and like put a sticky note on it. It was like a wear test sample that they were like keeping like archived, and I basically like
Mine.
put a piece of tape on it and said like, I want this whenever you're done. And like heard nothing. Finally I just went and took it. It was like maybe like a year later. I was like, done. And no one asked for it.
You gotta have some of those spoils, from spoils of war,
Yeah. But again, I was using this orange, and like this is the same like type of orange like hits that we were putting in like the final render.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like unheard of for these like, again, if this is sitting on the shelf in those like podiatric,
Yeah, that's like
podiatrists.
black leather or gray
Yeah,
or
like,
navy,
and some of them
no
were,
accents.
yeah, like really, yeah, they were like, some of them were tan, and they had like some
Yeah,
hits of like lavender, like really soft, like
right.
trending older.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna like throw orange on this thing because I like orange. And um, one thing I was gonna say about this sample is like, um, we we made this thing. We finally get it to looking like, when I first got this, like this is the first this was the first one I held like fully built in hand, and I
Mm-hmm.
knew like right off the bat like this is
Get a banger.
already going to change the world. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um just to show everybody like how but like the mesh obviously is stripy. Like this is just stripes.
Yeah,
Obviously, I was not going for stripes. It was like
right.
vendor miscommunication. We were trying to get this like fade effect, and they just
Yeah,
striped the whole thing. I mean, look at that. It's like,
right.
um, anyway, the like, it's so funny. The bottom, I don't know if I'll be able to get to this level, but
Mm-hmm.
you see how like the textures
Mm-hmm.
are like all different.
Yeah, because you were playing around. You wanted
Yeah,
to see.
like I'm doing all kinds of stuff. Like all the rubber textures are all different, but you can see the
Yeah, like
final.
you were like, put texture 85 on this one, texture 87 on this one. I want to see
Yeah,
what this one looks like.
you
Yeah,
can see
yeah,
the final one we went with is like
yeah.
the little swirly guys that make a
Mm-hmm.
comeback on the Ghost Max 2 as well. Um,
Nice.
but and obviously I was really Easter eggy like right off my innovations thing, so I was like putting like Dyad 12, just putting 12 up there, and then I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, 12 dots because 12,
Oh,
and
yeah,
like
yeah,
I was like doing stuff like that, and I did 12 dots back here as well.
See, I always wanted to ask you like what each of these lines and details mean because I have a pair that I wear all the
Yeah.
time because they're super comfy, and I run in them as well. And so like when every time I look at them, I'm like, I don't even know what was going on in Jake's head when he was making this, but I want to know.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, the one thing that I think is the best about this, and when they interviewed me for the Brooks, oh, this is a one of one, by the way.
Ooh, ooh, one of one. All
Uh,
right, yeah, just drop a one of one on us. All
this
right.
is this is a one of one. Uh, I don't know why it is to this day blows my mind that they only let this shoe live for like 9 months or something.
Dude, yeah, that's something I was gonna say. They immediately announced the two right after it came out.
I was like, man, that's craziness.
Yeah,
Um, but maybe we'll see more of it sometime. Who knows? But um,
hopefully.
what was I gonna say? The first thing that um, we hired a new guy on. Actually, it's Ryder, the guy who like designed all the awesome Hyperion stuff recently. And the first question he asked me was, he's like, he comes up to me, he's like, dude, sick shoe, but what the heck is that?
It's Utah. It's Utah.
Yeah, I wish it was that cool of a story. I
What is
basically
it?
said, I was like, look, dude, I hold the pen. Like, I was like, look, dude, that is me saying, like,
I get to do
I'm
what
in
I want.
charge. Like,
That's crazy.
that was like, that was all it was about. I was like, you know what? And while we're at it, let's kind of piece off
Ka-ching.
the rubber because it's not in the first sample, and like,
Oh, okay, cool.
which is like, and part of me was like, yeah, it's like it's a really high toe wrap, like,
It is. It is a really high toe wrap.
and like sometimes I like to do things like just to let people know that like, yeah, I'm fully aware of like everything on this shoe, like, and so to have people think that like I do not like, there's not a person behind this shoe. Like that's the whole reason behind chipping off that piece was like,
You
and
should have
people,
said it's weight savings.
well,
It's
yeah, and like I mean, there is a little bit of that, but like what was funny is like I think everyone was so fixated on these lines, like
hmm
that's like the thing. That's the thing. Like not to like harp on, not to harp on Brooks. I love it. Like I love them, and I love these battles. Like it was fun to like looking back. It's fun to like think that like I had internal battles over like dots and lines, right? Like and so like they were like, well, why is it dots and why are these lines? Like why is this all like dots and lines and dots and lines? And I'm like, fine, it'll all just be lines. It's all good. Except for one dot. Because you know why? Like
because
I hold the pen, baby. Like that's the reason. Like there's no
dude,
other
that's
reason.
amazing.
Like other
Yeah,
than
yeah.
like and then maybe that's like spiteful or whatever. Like but like I tend to think like you have moments like this, like just to like break like the whatever's inside of you
Mm-hmm.
that like
Mm-hmm.
you need to break it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like if you feel like you're shackled down at your job, it's like some people go and like buy a Harley or something, or like I don't know, like some people like you know whatever, like make effigies and burn them. Like who knows what it is, like to try to like have that outlet, right? And like this area is like I literally saw there were places where I could like hide things that like
Yeah,
no one would pick up on. Then like we
yeah.
were in the pandemic and I'm like literally thinking to myself like I could notch the toe wrap rubber and no one will say a word. And like literally like and at a place like Brooks where it's like so it's like hyper focused, like to have something
Mm.
like this slip by to me
Yeah.
is the chef's freaking kiss. Like and
I
that's how
love
it
that.
like and what's funny is like now you go like, um, it just feels like everyone wants their shoes to be like hyper like done, like perfection, and there's
Hmm.
no missing pieces, and there's no everything's tight. I just think there was just
Everything was
like,
like computationally, like algorithmically made or whatever,
yeah,
instead of just being like, hey, I had a creative moment where I thought, hey, like I know I could slip this in and it's gonna be funny and only I will know. And
yeah,
now all the listeners of TPD know.
yeah.
That's amazing. That's storytelling right there. That's
And
it.
what's it's funny is like, this is only episode 10. It's gonna get buried. Like no one's gonna care. Like, will it make ripples? Probably not. Like, probably not, and that's fine. Like, it's not meant for that. But it's like, just like that you can like take time to like not be super serious. Um, I just think of like the brain breaking that must have happened just because I wanted to chip a piece of rubber out of like,
Right.
like, for me it's like this like master of my domain kind of thing. Like, there's
Mm,
probably something in my psyche that's just like, I have to do this. You guys
yeah.
know. Like, I
It's gonna
have to
it's
do
gonna
this.
scratch that part of your brain,
Yeah,
like
like,
to do that.
um and I think like the notch out is just like funny enough. Like, you don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, but
I
like,
always looked at it and was like, oh, maybe it's Utah. Maybe it's the state of Utah. Like,
yeah, which would be cool. Like that, like, because I lived there for a long time, and BYU, and I got married in Utah. And nope,
yep.
no, not
Nope.
that
Just
cool.
just I hold the pen. That's it.
That was it. And like, there's other little like things that are kind of funny. Like, like, I could have taken the time to like make that concentric.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
But
I
I
didn't.
remember when I first got my pair in and I like flipped it the other way and I was like, is this a subliminal Nike swoosh?
Oh, this little guy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Nah.
I think it's only more. It only looks more like that because I have a size 13. So like my size 13 looks a little
No,
different.
it's,
That one just looks like non-concentric. Mine
yeah.
looks like a little different.
But like, just that this like doesn't butt up to the edge. It just like, there's no reason for
Yeah,
a swoop. Like, I don't know what the heck. I think I was just like, I'm not fixing that. Like, not a chance. Not a
dude,
chance. When
I
everything
love
else
that.
like down the line is like holding
Mm-hmm.
holding to this edge, this one's
Yep.
like a little bump ramp. But like, I don't know, man. Sometimes like people are actually making these things. These are human things, and
Yeah,
I think it
it's a
makes the
reflection of the person who worked on it.
yeah, it makes the product what it is. And maybe I am a little crazy, maybe I am a little whatever, but when you have to go through and like almost self place each one of these little dots,
Yeah,
like look at this guy. Look at him.
yeah.
Little guy trailing out there. I could have
You
hit
did that one on
delete.
purpose.
Yeah, I could have
You
hit
went
delete. I could have deleted that guy,
on the line work, but you didn't.
but I didn't. I don't know. It's just funny, like how much of this like escaped by, and like I did have a manager send me. He's like, "Look, dude, I know what you've done. Like,
You think you're slick,
it's not skating by anymore, my friend." Like, it's like,
but
hey,
hey, but when you think about that too, like what you were talking about, like maybe like right now at least, I mean, it's definitely not your last shoe, but like definitely like a career high shoe for you. And
yeah,
in a lot of ways, it like brought Brooks back up to the top. I think the Ghost Max did, like I think unequivocally.
yeah,
Um, it was like right place, right time, right everything, and people love the design.
yeah,
It's because it's like simple enough and it has that aesthetic, and you've done a good job of like masking the dyad inside of it
yeah,
to make it into like this shoe. Like I see it on everyone from like 50-year-old dads walking around Disneyland to like little, 120-pound wet, women running, 13, 14 miles from, even marathons in them. I've lined up to several 5, 10Ks and like taken pictures and sent you.
Yeah.
Like people rocking your shoes.
It just, it was right place, right time. And it was like, oh man, it's just something about it.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to hang on. I don't want to say it was luck, but it just all comes together in like this really nice package.
I was about to say it. I was about to say it before we started recording, but again, it keeps coming up. It's luck is when preparedness meets opportunity.
Yeah.
It's like exactly what happened.
And like, again, it was just one of those things where I just had a little bit of vision. Like, it was just like, okay, I definitely want this upper to look a certain way. Like, I want this material. Just, guys, give me this material. This is what I want. And then I definitely had like, the sidewall was like half baked because I was like, well, the ghost, and I will say also, well, we're talking about it. These little dudes that you see kind of around the cushion language at Brooks.
Yeah.
These little like notches in. It's on like the Ghost 15 and stuff. That was like innovation stuff that I was doing. Like the concept for me was like we need release in our shoes. What if I just took like a drill bit and just went and just like cut release into the shoe?
Yeah.
And like that's where we have it. But because this was so high of a stack, we were okay with release on both sides. Like,
yeah,
because it's like huge. But and so that's why it's nicely reflected. But like that's like the thought is like, and then to call it out, like that's what we did. Like is the other thing. And I did that on my like renderings for like Instagram and stuff, and like the
showed a little.
Yeah, like you land on it, and I showed like this kind of like collapsing in on itself. But yeah, like calling out the release with like an orange stripe is like, I think is kind of different. Like, but that's like stuff like that like I was just like, oh, what if we just, and then it's in like, yeah, I think they brought into the Trace as well, and like some other shoes with that stuff. But that was kind of my like very I don't know what to call it, like Audi, like kind of very engineered way of saying like, this is where I'm putting release. And it was like a design language I developed over in the innovation side.
Yeah, but still, like, it's still evidence of you as a person working on this thing, because that like kind of like the Dremel motif of dremeling out part of a midsole to create release is something that you did previous to this, and then you're like carrying that into a production shoe, because previously you were taking midsoles and actually physically doing this.
Yeah. Well, did we actually do that?
I think I saw like in your portfolio you had a few where you were messing around with Dremels like that.
Yeah, we did do stuff where we were like really trying to just like, what if we just like a drill press, just like like done. That's where the release is.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are just kind of the tidbits. I think that's good enough. But it's like, yeah, it all comes together, man, and the star is born.
Yeah, man.
I remember thinking we need to do an external counter because I was like, well, it's just a big shoe and people want stability. And we just did like the lightest weight TPU because, I mean, Brooks is known for like doing giant darn heel counters and anodizing.
I will say it's pretty like thin. It's pretty thin, but it's pretty stiff.
Yeah. It does the job.
Yeah, it does the job. It does great.
And there's a heel counter under it too, so it's like double counter.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, there you have it. I'm glad we got to laugh about that.
Yeah, dude, I didn't know those stories. I'm so excited. And
Yeah.
let us know. Let us know in the comments if you want to hear more about the Ghost Max, because I know that there's like 1.5 million other stories we didn't hear.
Yeah, because that's the other thing I think we want to talk about is like if we do have comments or questions or things people want to hear about, we will definitely like do our best to um, do that. Again, like I know I feel it in my bones. People are wanting us to like draw stuff um, and like show process, and so I'm like, that's probably next year. It's probably it's probably a next year's thing to kind of
It's
get
only
all
a
that
couple weeks
going.
away.
I know what I do want to talk about, at least sometime here soon, is Ghost Max 2 and Beast, because I did those at the same time. And I think they kind of tell two different stories. And I think it's like super interesting because um, they both kind of take their own like divergent path,
Mm-hmm.
um, but still end at like shoes that made it to market, right? Like they both
Yep.
kind of run their own course, but it's like kind of a tale of two things at the same time, which is I think is a cool. And I had this going on with the Hyperion and Ghost Max One. I had those like things going on at the same time, but Hyperion's not that compelling of a story to me. I just like got it done and got it out, and
Right.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
I still love the shoe. It's right behind us, but um,
Yo.
eh, but yeah, so yeah, let us know. Like, we definitely want to answer questions. We want to be engaged with the footwear world. Again, it's just two guys right now in their rooms, like talking smack about whatever. But hopefully, we can continue making it something people start coming to us for. Who knows? Maybe we will have studio at some point, but that only happens if you know, stuff starts raining in. Like, the people really start wanting to get on the show. So I'll stop rambling. Thanks again for everyone who has already joined us. All man, are we in the? We might be close to the 30-ish subscribers now.
Woo.
Only 970 left to go before we hit the. We hit some metrics for
Yeah.
YouTube, but we'll keep plugging along and see what happens. Again, Jake, Colin, we are what is quickly becoming Tech Packs or do. Like, subscribe, tell everyone about it. We love shoes. All right. Anything from you,
Peace.
Colin? Nothing?
That's it. Peace. Let's go.
Wrap it up. All right. See you guys next time. Ooh.